welcome to this episode on my App Tutor TV. This week we're going to be looking at lens flares, something that's been in Photoshop nearly since its incarnation. Well, we're going to look at deleting lens flares that you accidentally get in the camera when you're taking a picture directly into sunlight. You get these little artifacts in here, lens flares, and sometimes you want them and sometimes you don't. So in this circumstance we don't, and then I'll show you how we can add artificial lens flares using the lens flare filter in Photoshop. So there are various methods for erasing anything in Photoshop, and most of the time it's a bit of trial and error as to which method works the best. So let's investigate what will work best in this instance. So I'm going to try this simple Lasso Tool here, and I'm going to start on the one on the left hand side here, and I'm just going to Control plus to zoom in a touch and just scroll down so I've got the area. Now you can actually see it's quite a large area that needs removing. It's not just this bright yellow bit with this sort of red halo. We've actually got this slightly green halo around it as well. It all needs removing. So let's start selecting. So I'm going to come around here, I'm going to draw around. I'm going to try not to remove any of the rock in here. Come round to the edge of this rock, all the way around to that point there. Now there are different things we can do here. Let's try the first method, where I'm going to go up to Edit and Fill, and then I'm going to ensure that the contents that's going to fill it with is content aware, and then click OK and see what we get. Well, if we just remove the marquee selection here, you'll see that, well, it's an average result. It's done an okay job in areas, but there are areas that it needs a lot of refinement. Now one of the things you need to bear in mind is that when you are removing something, especially something that's quite complex like a lens flare, you will hardly ever get a one-hit wonder, a one button press to delete it or remove it. It's a bit of a refinement process. So we've got this here now, so let's see if we can refine this by using some of the other tools. So I'm going to come in here and select the healing brush to start with. Let's just increase the size of this, and then just use the spot healing brush, sorry, and just minimize the size of this and just brush in here and see what we get. Well, every time I press it we're getting a slightly different result. And I suppose after a while, clicking away at this, we're going to get a passable result. Now the area here is going to be a little bit more complex, and the method I propose using to eliminate that is using the patch tool. So I'm going to select this area around here, all the way around. I'm going to try not to remove any of the rock again, all the way around to this area here. And the way this works is, once you have your selection made, you need to make sure that your option in here is content aware. Don't worry about the adaptation yet, because we can change that after the fact. And then all you do is you simply move the selection to an area that you'd like to replace it with, and sort of try and match pieces in the image to bits that should be replaced in that area. So here we go. So I've got this bit of a hedge line here, you can see here, and when I let go, well, it fills that in, and we can adjust the adaptation here, strict, medium. I suggest that loose will probably do a good job here. So let's just once again remove the selection by using the keyboard shortcut Control D, and then let's come back to the spot healing brush, and let's just make a few alterations in here just to see where we got. Well, it's not perfect, but certainly it's eliminated the lens flare. I'm just going to Control 0 to move out as much as I can. Now I could spend a lot more time refining this and removing it, but in the context of this video I think that'll do us for the purpose of showing you how to erase lens flares. Right, let's move on to actually adding lens flares. So how can we do it? Well, obviously the very simple process of making sure you've got your layer select. In this case it's a background layer, so we don't need to bother too much about selecting the layer. But if we then come up to filter, down to render, and then select lens flare, you'll see that we are presented with the lens flare dialog box. And the way this works is you have this little crosshair in here, and you place that crosshair where you want the sort of the bright area to be. So in this case here we want to select the sun here, then we can select the type of lens we want. I think in this circumstance I'm going to go for one of the first two here, either the 50 to 300mm zoom or the prime lens here. I think I'm going to go for the first one here. Then I can adjust the brightness we want and so on and so forth. I'm going to make this reasonably bright, up there to about 162%, and click OK. And bang, it overpowers our image, and it's not destroyed our image, but it's added that lens flare destructively. So how can we add it in non-destructively? Well, the first thing we can do is use the keyboard shortcut Control Z or Z or Command Z on the Mac, and you'll see it's gone. And then what we need to do is add a new layer. So I'm going to add a new layer, and then I want to fill that with black. So let's just come in here, select black, and click OK, and that adds it in there. And then let's go back up to our filter, and because the lens flare was the last filter we used, we could have used the keyboard shortcut Control F, or just click on this item here, and you'll see it adds the previous lens flare parameters that we adjusted in that lens flare dialog box onto that layer. And then once we got it on that layer, all we need to do is select the blend mode. So let's come down to the blend mode we want, and I'm going to choose screen, and it adds it in there, and it's exactly as it was before. The difference is this is non-destructive, so I can turn it off completely, I can add it back in, or I could tone down the effect by changing the opacity in here. So say I didn't want it to be this bright, I could bump it all the way down or bump it all the way back up again. Alternatively, I could add adjustment layers to this particular layer. So say I wanted to change the hue or saturation of this particular layer. So let's click on the dialog box here, and what I want to do is I want to clip it just to the lens flare itself. So I'm going to press this little button here, which affects all the layers below, so it's just clipping it to that layer. And then I can adjust the color in here, so I can change the color. I'm going to colorize this down here. We can add any presets we want to in here, so we can add a bit of red boost and so on and so forth. Then of course we can turn all these off if we wanted to, even turn the lens flare off completely. And that is how you can add lens flares non-destructively and remove them from your images.